There it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay. Question number 1. Why did Gaiman choose to incorporate a traditional legend in his novel?
Say that again.
Why did Gaiman choose to incorporate a traditional legend in his novel? So, if you want to go, you can
I
start.
was gonna say kind of like
What?
sorry.
Oh,
You go ahead. We're all like talking at the same time.
okay. Sorry. I'll be
No,
fast.
no, it's fine.
Well, just for me, like, honestly, I didn't really know much about, like, African American culture. So this was kind of a nice way of, like, understanding a little bit more. It was just more, like, educational for me. I don't know. I should be more knowledgeable, but this helps.
Isaac, did you have something or?
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think when it comes to like smaller like folklore and traditions just aren't as well known. It was kind of like a good way for him to like, I don't know, kind of like the other books that we've read, just a way to share culture that isn't quite as well known, but
Yeah.
a way to do so
Mm-hmm.
in a way that like a general audience can understand.
Yeah. Well, like even like in the beginning of the book, I was like, okay, what even is this book about? I was so
I had
confused.
such a hard time starting.
Yeah.
Me too.
So I went back to the pre-reading and like really kind of dove into it because I was like, who is in Asazi? Like, apparently this is the second book of this series.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what? You know? So I was having a hard time understanding. But like the pre-reading was like crazy because it was like, whoa, there's so many stories about. I always want to call him Anasazi. Anansi. There's so many stories about Anansi. And, like, right? And it was cool how like even throughout the book the author would stop and be like, here's a random story, you know, like it kind of it's like side note, I'm gonna tell you this. And that's literally how he would say it, you know, like it was very, very interesting like how it was written and stuff. But like he not only like in the other novels that we've read, like things were just kind of incorporated and you knew that like there was like a similarity like with Cinder, you know, like it didn't come out and say, and here's a side note about Cinderella, you know. But with this it was like boom, you know, like so it didn't even just like parallel the folktale of Anansi, but it literally like what's the word? It literally incorporated it in like a different way that we've been reading about. You know?
Yeah.
So, but like you said, Isaac, like I think it's cool that he was able to do that so that we could understand it a little bit more now, you know, like for our time. So.
Yeah, the first two times they did that, when they like, it's like the story of like Fat Charlie, and then like suddenly it breaks off into like, oh, by the way, so this story about Nancy and like the tire, I'm like, wait, what's happening? The first two times I was like low key confused about like what was going on.
Yeah.
And then once they would finish the story, okay, weird, but like okay.
Yeah.
I get it. But like once it like started processing, like okay, now we're jumping here, now we're jumping here, now we're jumping to this person's point of view or this, you know. But it was interesting how you read it for sure. Okay, question 2. How did Gaiman adapt the story to meet the purposes of his novel?
Well, I think one of the purposes of his novel, I guess, or themes that I saw with like the importance of like the difference between mind versus force. And so like I think with his characters, he just kind of supported that theme, if that makes sense. So he did like he talked about like the god tiger and how he used force, but in reality, like Fat Charlie's dad beat him at his own game, and then Fat Charlie does it again. Does that make sense? Like his son does it. So like just like using the characters as evidence of that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Read that one more time.
The question. How did Gaiman adapt the story to meet the purposes of his novel? So, like, I guess
I had a hard time like putting themes of the book because it just seemed like a very Malaysia?
Yeah. Mirror.
Oh, okay. But it was hard for me to like find like a one or two themes. It just seemed kind of like it was like almost just thrown out there and informational. Like I didn't find like any like, oh, you know, this is good because it made me want to, or made me. But I don't know. It started to come together like toward the end though, when it started to go crazy. Like that was when it started to like make a little bit more of like a purpose sense to me, because it seemed like the first half of the book it was just like things were just happening without like any like reasoning behind it. At the end of the book, that's when I was like, oh, okay, like I'm starting to see a lot more actual reason, things like them like at first they like don't like each other, but then next thing you know they need each other. I don't know why I didn't see it coming that they're like the same person.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming at all for some reason. But I feel like if I watched it as a movie, I'd be like, they're totally like, you know. But as reading it in a book, when it happened, I was like, yeah, definitely did not see that coming.
Right. And just like a little point after that, like my sense of reality, I guess, was like challenged a lot, because like even at the beginning when Spider was like kissing Rosie or whatever, I'm like, how does Rosie like not know? Like that's not like Fat Charlie. So even like from the beginning of the book, I'm like, wait, like everything I know about reality needs to change because I'm not going to get this book if I don't.
Yeah.
I'm so confused.
Stuff like that, by the way, made it seem way more understandable to me. I was like, oh my gosh, now it all makes sense because I was like, what the freak do you mean? You're like kissing this dude and you have no idea, like hello, that is obviously your fiance. Like,
yeah.
how do you know that that's? I get that they're brothers. But I was like, maybe he's a shapeshifter. I don't know, because he's got all the traits of a god and stuff. So I was like, I don't know.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. In response to that question, I have to read it again. I think the way that he adapted Anansi's like folktales and stuff was like to take it in his son's perspective. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
And so not to just tell the stories of Anansi, but to tell the stories of Anansi in the son's, in a different perspective, different like plot and stuff. Where like the same messages of like, for me, a big thing was like telling your own story and like singing your own song, because that was like a big, that was a really big metaphor that he used.
Right.
Like the song is like basically just how you live your life,
Yeah.
and so like by doing it in the son's way instead of his way, that helped like a different point of view, I guess, adapting. Okay, next question. In what ways does Gaiman make Anansi stories relevant for contemporary readers? I think, like, specifically his stories in the novel, he would, like, pull, I think his goal was to, like, whether it happened for us or not, he would try to, like, pull us in and captivate us, like, by a specific point, and then be like, and here's a side note, here's an Anansi story. And then keep going, and then he'd pull us in, and then here's another story,
Right.
And then those stories became real with Charlie, and how like Charlie had to go and to like the caves and go talk to all of the animals, and so like yeah.
Yeah. I think like specifically with Fat Charlie, like his like at the beginning he really doesn't know like what his identity is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that's a common theme with young adults in general, just kind of figuring out what you want to do with your life. And so like I definitely related to Charlie in that fact. I'm like, oh, like I have felt before, like, what is my identity? I've lost someone close to me. What does that mean to me? And
No, that's really good. That was one of the ones I was thinking of, but also, when it comes to like a contemporary listener, it seems like the story could have been told at any time, but it was pretty modern when he would modernize it. He would like make sure that it was like obviously modernized, like when there were ways to modernize it, if that makes any sense. Like I remember like not really sure what time like everything was taking place, but then, and especially like the way that they described like going from bar to bar, like that could have been like any time too. But I remember there would be like certain moments in the book when like random things would be mentioned where I was like, oh, like it must be pretty modern, So I don't know if that like actually answers the question.
no, I totally agree.
Yeah, it was cool because so like I served my mission in Ireland, and this was in London where they were at, or in England. I don't remember if it was London. I don't think it was London, but they were in England, and it was cool because like they would use words that were specific to the UK. So
Europe,
yeah,
like flat.
yeah, like going back to the flat, or like he said something about like crisps, which are chips. So they call crisps.
Yeah.
And then chips. So like at one point they went to a chippy, and that's just like a fish and chips place, And so it was cool. I was like, oh, like cool. So I don't know. That drew me in. I liked that.
That's cool.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. Which literary elements did you find significant in this novel? There's a follow-up question, but we can discuss each one differently. Yeah. So what?
I think one of the literary elements that I thought was like a huge role was dialogue. Like talking, because it seems like there wasn't really any small time characters. Really, it seemed like every character played like a pretty big role, and so they interact like, and they seemed like all of them interacted with each other almost.
Mhm.
So, anytime there was dialogue, it was kind of it was pretty important.
Right. I think for me, like foreshadowing, like it talks about how like Fat Charlie really likes birds at the beginning, and then near the end, that's like pretty much like destroys Spider, like the birds, and just I think foreshadowing, and like when they talk about like
It's great. I did not think of that at all. So it's good that you mentioned that because to be honest with you, when the birds came in, I was like,
what
what the freak is going on?
yeah, that was like a big one for me.
Yeah, like to go along with foreshadowing, like on my summary, I wrote down like quotes and stuff. But like one thing that he alluded to with foreshadowing was like when his mother died, and then there was a stranger, and then he said, in the years since his mother died, he sometimes wondered about that stranger, who he was, why he was there. Sometimes Fat Charlie thought he had simply imagined him.
Himself.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
it's like alluding to like he has been thinking, like he would sometimes think about this person. So it's like kind of foreshadowing that this person is going to come in to the
Yeah.
at one point. And then another time, Mrs. Dunwitty foreshadowed that Fat Charlie would go to Florida when she was talking to the other lady, and she was like, "Oh, the other lady was talking to Mrs. Dunwoody, and she said, "Who you got coming to dinner?" And she said, "So and so, you and Fat Charlie. Um, by the time the boy gets here, he'll have a real appetite." And I was like, "What? How is he gonna come there?" And so that was like a definite foreshadowing because like we knew that he was going to be in Florida.
Florida, yeah.
Any other ones?
Huh.
Couple other ones. So I looked up the literary device of like when you like talk to animals, or when there's like when you describe animals to have like a human complexion or vice versa, and it's called anthropomorphism. And so that was really big in the book, like when Charlie went to the other world and he described all the animals and he talked with them and stuff, and then just how like Spider was a spider but not, and Anansi, like the author would like go and talk about Anansi's stories, and it'd be like he's a spider but he's also a human, and he never changes. It just depends on like the context of the story, like
Right.
quite interesting. But yeah, that's called anthropomorphism.
Interesting.
Learn something new there. And then like for me, another big one was just like I said, he uses metaphors. The whole time it was about like singing a song and like stuff, and just like how that is a metaphor to like living your life and telling your story. And like how like in the end Charlie used a song to mend things with the animals. He said, "You sing the song, you fix things." So it's like a way that he used that like metaphor throughout the book.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had it like all written down, so I figured.
No, it's
Perfect.
a lot of I feel like you could find conflict really easily in like every book too. Like the mom, oh man, I wanted to like punch her in the face. Jeez. Like I could never imagine like trying to deal with like a mother-in-law that's like controlling like that. So like there's conflict like right there. There's conflict like him being arrested. I don't know. There's like so many things where it's like every book I feel like since there's like there needs to be some sort of conflict resolution, like there's obviously going to be some sort of conflict. And there was definitely like a good amount in this book too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You had talked about like plot twist. What were you like thinking about with the plot twist?
The plot twist was like that Spider and Fat Charlie were the same person.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was gonna put that in my thesis, but then it was like that was really the only part that was like kind of like the plot twist. It was like a twist, and it was like that's a major part of the plot, you know, characters, and yeah, when I read that, I was pretty like taken by surprise, and yeah, I don't know, and like it didn't really help the thesis that I had in mind. So that's why I was like, maybe I just won't use it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I don't know if it played as big of a role as it was as a surprise.
Yeah.
Like it was a huge surprise, but I don't think it like made this huge impact. You know, it was a pretty decent sized impact, but it wasn't like a complete change of course.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, so the follow-up question to that, I don't know if we've discussed it yet, is what effect did these literary elements have on the message of the novel?
Well, what were like the messages that you guys got out of the book? I guess since there's
The themes and messages I wrote down in my summary were singer and song, self versus society, and everyone has their story to tell, and yeah, just like the importance of the story.
Yeah, mine was pretty similar. I honestly, because that's what I was saying. I was having a hard time trying to like think of like themes to this story because I literally only thought of two, and one was the importance of like self-know, and I like had to like Google how to like put my words into it, but like just having like an understanding of who yourself is. So that was one of them. Is just like have it like the importance of that, and the another one was the like the importance of family. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that one because like in the end, like the whole time, Fat Charlie was so embarrassed of his father and stuff, you know, and by the end he was wearing his father's fedora, you know, and like made amends with that. And
yeah, there's a ton of stuff like that. Like I guess like even that like I had just thought of another theme now, but like understanding like truly wanting to marry your spouse. I don't know, like that's just off the top of my head, you know. It's funny too because all three of us are married too, so like that is definitely like really important. Yeah, but there's definitely like a lot of like I remember the first part that I had thought of that was I know that like in the beginning he kind of like just didn't really want anything to do with his dad, but from every like passage that I was reading, it didn't seem like he was really sold on it. It seemed like he wasn't very like that passionate. He just like didn't want. It's almost like he didn't want to put forth the effort, rather than he really did not want his dad coming to like his wedding. But another one was like when Spider and Fat Charlie were like at the bar, their first thing was to drink wine, and they like would toast to their like first two things that they drank to was their parents.
Hmm.
So that was like one of the main things. I was like, oh, I'm sure everybody that drinks, I know that I used to drink, like we would always drink to family.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. For me, it was like, I don't know, like the whole like mind, like using your mind, like despite using force, I guess. And then I also like thought about like not being ashamed of where you come from, I guess. Like
Yeah.
using that as a benefit and not like a consequence, I guess.
Mhm.
Because really like his setting, like the setting portrayed like for Fat Charlie really helps his progress in the end. Like just knowing about his heritage stuff. Like once he accepted that, I feel like things went a lot better for him.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, do you guys want to share your theses? We have a minute and a half, but like I need to.
Right.
So.
I might do some changes to mine, but I can share it.
Okay.
In Neil Gaiman's book and Anansi Boys, he uses metaphors, conflict, and foreshadowing to show that using your mind is greater than using force to get what you want.
Awesome. I like it.
Mine is Gaiman's and Nancy Boys uses dialogue and conflict to help his audience understand the importance of family.
I like it.
I like it. Nice and simple, but to the
Yeah.
point. And then mine is in Neil Gaiman's book, Anansi Boys. He uses anthropomorphism, metaphor, and foreshadowing to portray the importance of telling one story.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, I think we all have good theses.
Okay.
If we want to just write our own paragraph or whatever, and then like if you guys want to just send them to me, I'll put it in one document and send it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Finish mine up and send it.
Okay.
Sounds good. Okay.
Right.
I'll put this on YouTube again, and then I'll send in the chat the link to it again.
Awesome. Thanks, Isaac.
Sweet.
Yeah. Right.
It,
Great day.
and recording. I don't know if that'll.
I will stop recording right